Hey folks, this is BestInSlot. Welcome back to Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is out in less than 24 hours. You can now go preload it on Steam and all that exciting stuff. Very, well, exciting. This is a top 10 tips video. Quite a lot has changed from Evolution 1 to Evolution 2. Even if you were a pro at the last game, you might find it difficult to get 5-star parks with some of the new systems. So I'm going to try to give you tips on those and some general things to do with the dinosaurs, yada yada yada. Because, you know, it can be a little frustrating at the start. Of course, if you want to figure out everything for yourself, then why did you click on this video? But this is your opportunity to take leave right now. Get out. I actually pointed out of the room. No one can see me. Anyways, we're going to start actually right here on the homepage. And we're going to discuss the unlock order. As in, you know, there's a lot of modes here. There's a lot to do. What should you do first? For the vast majority of players, I really do recommend you get stuck into the campaign. It's only 3 to 4 hours short. It acts as a quasi-tutorial to an extent. I think it's really fun. It's definitely too short, but I do think it's a really fun experience. And I hope people get in there and enjoy it before they leap into the rest of the game. At the end of the day, this will be 1% of your total playtime by the end. So, you know, why not leap in and enjoy that right away? If you're a new player, however, if you never played the first game, then the campaign won't be enough to set you up. Just because it doesn't really introduce park building mechanics per se. What you're going to want to do for that is come into Chaos Theory and do the Jurassic Park Chaos Theory, which is also designed as a sort of tutorial. It'll introduce all the different mechanics and set you up for the rest of the Chaos Theories and also for challenge mode. If you are well accustomed with the last game, I would still recommend hopping in and doing some Jurassic Park, but if you're trying to get into Sandbox as quickly as possible, then really what you're going to want to do is challenge mode. And when you load up challenge mode, you'll only have Canada available, but what you can do is go into Canada, go into easy mode, and you can unlock the vast majority of species and buildings and stuff like that. You can't get quite every dinosaur, and in order to get the Indominus Rex and Indoraptor especially, you'll have to go do some Chaos Theory, but you can get all the aquatics, you can get all the pterosaurs, you can get 90% of the dinosaurs right here in Canada, and then you might have to do another challenge here and there just to unlock the rest. But if you do it on easy mode, it's pretty quick, and you'll get yourself set up nicely to hop into Sandbox. So that would be my recommendation. For tip number 2, we're going to focus on the new path system, because paths have become a lot more important in Evolution 2, and it's really because they tie in with your guest numbers. Now I'm going to show you the screen right here. We're going to hop into our park rating, and what you can see first of all is that your park rating is now determined by your income. It is just a straight up income thing, and that income is of course determined by, you know, how appealing your dinosaurs are, your dinosaur visibility, your attractions, everything it was in the first game, but now you know your only goal is do what you can to raise your income. And your guests are obviously a big part of that. So if we hop into the guest tab here, you'll see several different lines. Now we've got our guest count in the blue. It dipped a little bit there because my raptors ate everyone. So we can see our guest count there in the blue. We can see our potential guests. That's the most number of guests our park can achieve based on our dinosaur rating and visibility and all that other stuff. Path capacity, this is the new thing, this is the thing we need to focus on, and overcrowded guests, which I think is like shops and stuff like that. So as you can see, although we do have more guests than our capacity, we've got overcrowding going on, and it's barely above capacity, and we're nowhere near this white line at the top. So as you go through the game and you go through research tabs, if we go into guest comfort, you'll see here we have a wide path, and it unlocks the wide path and luxury standard path. You can also get a main thoroughfare, I should say, which is an even wider path. And this is a hugely important system. You will not get 5 stars without abusing this system a little bit. It actually is the main reason I really struggled at one point on this very map. So I've researched just that first level, and you can see I've now got a wide path available. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on putting that wide path on the main pathway into the park. It'll temporarily shut down your buildings, it's not a big deal. But if we go through like this, just replace all the main buildings, the ones leading up to the shops, and I've got no money, the ones leading up to the shops and stuff like that, and we give that just a second to kind of build back up, we should start to see a pretty humongous change. Yeah, there you go. You can see our guest count has nearly doubled just because I replaced the paths, and now it's hitting the cap once again. So you'd have to replace a few more or get the even wider path. It is super important that you do this. Honestly, this is one of the things that really stumped me initially. Maybe it is explained in the game and I missed it, but it's super important, and I really recommend wider path being one of the quicker upgrades that you try to get hold of. The other major thing that's really changed in terms of how you lay out your parks is the shops. The shop system has changed quite a lot. And again, this is something I really only just figured out. So you're going to put your shops down and you're going to be presented with a screen like this. This is a medium-sized shop. You'll start off with smaller ones. I recommend you get to the medium ASAP. Large is less of an upgrade, less necessary, but medium is very important, I would suggest. Now, the important thing we're going to look at here is local interest ratio. This shows you your 4 general guest types. You've got nature people, you've got luxury people, you've got adventurous people, and you've got people, the grey ones. And depending on how many of those guests you have in your park, which is determined by, what attractions you have, what hotels you have, stuff like that, just general how you build your park. For me, it always ends up grey and green focused, generally speaking. You'll have this configuration below here, and you'll have these red bars and grey bars, and then a tick or a cross. And basically, the higher the bar is, that's because you see green is at 40% and green is the highest bar. So the more guests there are of that type, the more of them you have to satisfy. So what you need to do is use these modules and the type of thing you're selling to satisfy those guest types. So you can see here we need to aim for green and grey. So let's say stick in some falafel wraps, lovely stuff. And you'll unlock more of these as you do research throughout the game. But we need a lot more green, a lot more grey. So what about a skeleton display perhaps? That'll get both of those into the ticks. And what about the oranges and the yellows? We can get a bit of yellow virus statue and maybe a little bit for the orange. What about a jukebox? There we go. So we're looking at what they give us via these little upticks here and the different colours and trying to match it until they've all got ticks on the left hand side. And as you can see, my profit has gone from 7,000 to 32,000 just by correcting these modules. Now the important thing is, that's quite easy to do to get these all to have ticks, but the important thing is that you don't then fill up the rest of the modules. This is something I was doing constantly. If I hover over water feature here, you'll see these bars are going to fill up even higher. But if you look at my profit, it actually drops by 5,000. Each of these interior modules costs money to maintain, it costs money to run. And there is no benefit that I've seen at actually increasing these any further. All you have to do is beat the red. Once you get past the red, then you're done. You don't need to touch anything else. You can see my profit drops if I add anything at all because there's no benefit. They've all got that tick marker. Again, super important if you want to optimize your shops and make lots of money, which of course you do because that's how you get 5 stars now. Really recommend the path system and the shop system being a big focus on your park builds. Tip number 4 is all to do with power. This stuff right here. In the past game, you'd begin with a small power station, link it all together, and that's how you'd power your parks. Now in Jurassic World Evolution 2, whether you're loading challenge mode or chaos theory mode or whatever, you won't have access to the small power station right away. You'll have access to this, the backup generator. This is cheaper than a power station, but produces less power. And if we build one right here, you'll see that you can resupply it. It actually comes with a certain limit of fuel, up to 300 fuel, and you get 100 at the start, and it costs a fortune to fill it up. 300,000 to fill it up, and even more if you use it all up. Whereas the standard power station doesn't cost you any money whatsoever. Now you will need to build a backup generator. You can't get any of your initial buildings online otherwise. And backup generators have their uses. If your main power station goes down because of a storm or a tornado or whatever it is, a sandstorm, then the backup generator kicks in and keeps your park running, which is very important. However, if you use these to power your park, you will go bankrupt. I'm just telling you that right now. That's why I went bankrupt in my Chaos Theory gameplay. Build your backup power generator, power your science center initially, which is your research building. Go into research, go into power, and get this one right here, improved power technology. You'll have access to it right from the start, and that will get you your small power station. Build a small power station and then never touch these things ever again. Maybe have one of these next to like your large carnivore habitats and stuff like that. They won't drain fuel if they're not in use. So you can have it next to a small power station and it will never use up fuel. You can see here it's 300 at 300, even though it's around all these buildings, because my small power station is actually doing the work. If the small power station goes down, this will start to drain, but it'll keep my buildings going. Next up, I want to discuss another of the new mechanics, and that is the scientist mechanic, your staff members for your park. Now, these come in several different flavors, all with interesting bios for sure, but they've got different skills: logistics, genetics, and welfare. Logistics is a lot of the research options and also the excavations to dig up fossils. Genetics is what you use to actually produce your dinosaurs, and so is welfare. And if you want to cure your dinosaurs, that's also welfare as well. All of them are, generally speaking, pretty useful. If you're playing in Sandbox, I would recommend basically ignoring logistics and going for genetics and welfare as much as possible, because you don't need to do excavations, and the two you need to hatch a dinosaur are genetics and welfare. Now, there's a few things to talk about here. The first is I would try to specialize with your staff members. Sometimes you'll see a fairly general character, 445, 333. This is a good example of a very general character here with Julie Alvarado. And having a character who's a little good at everything, a jack of all trades, is not necessarily a bad thing, but the problem is the higher level dinosaurs and the higher level tasks require a lot of skill points, and you're going to need people with 8s and 9s and 10s in order to pull those tasks off. My personal recommendation is to have multiple staff members specialised in each section and having 8, 9, 10 skill points associated, and that way you'll never run into a task that you're unable to achieve because your staff are undertrained. The other thing I want to talk about are the traits. Now, these are actually super important. For those traits, I'd really recommend focusing on speed and cost. You'll see a few other things, having a specialist here and there who can go up to 10 can be pretty cool, but faster, cheaper, faster again at the top. These are ones you want to focus on if you're going to get anything done in time and also be able to afford anything. If you've got, say, cheaper incubation instead of faster incubation, let's say this is cheaper, and you're hatching a Spinosaurus, which costs $2 million, Spinosaurus is super expensive, cheaper incubation will knock that cost down by 600,000 or so. It is a gigantic discount, and I think that becomes much higher value than most of the other options. So that would be my recommendation for scientists. Pick a few specialists or ones who can get high scores, and then focus on traits that will decrease task time and task price. The next thing we're going to discuss is the genetic system, which of course has also changed since the last game. You're now going to produce egg clutches, and those genes will be distributed amongst your egg clutches. I'm going to show you this very quickly. So we're on the Pachyrhinosaurus here, and by default all the dinosaurs have different negative traits, and you have to unlock those and then remove them. And you've got 7 available modifications even here on Sandbox. So Pachyrhinosaurus, when you produce an egg clutch, let's say you produce 6 eggs, each egg has a 50% chance of carrying the short-lived gene. So on average you'd have 3 eggs with short-lived. If you want to reduce that to 0, you'll use 2 of your available modifications, and that'll become 0%. If you want to give it a 100% chance of a long life, all of your eggs in your clutch would then have that ability. You can do that, but you'd use up a lot of your modifications. So it's actually a really interesting system of checks and balances and stuff like that, a good system that I really enjoy. However, beyond those genes, there are other genes that are randomly assigned, or traits you would suggest. So I've got a little clutch of eggs here, and this is the screen you'll get, and you'll see we've got these red warning markers. So this one, no manifested traits. This one's got short-lived, it's also got unfit. Those are the genes that we saw just a moment ago, the ones that the Pachyrhinosaurus naturally carries. If we go down to this one, however, you'll see it also has the aggressive trait. Not one that was there by default, but one that the game sort of randomly generated. There's a bunch of these that can kind of pop into the game. Things like aggressive or nocturnal, they're not all negative. The reason this is a tip really is that you'll see this aggressive gene pop up quite a lot. And whilst it's not necessarily always the end of the world, I think it's this plus 30% dominance. Let's put it this way, I had a group of 3 or 4 Pachyrhinosaurus, perfectly happy dinosaurs, and the aggressive one obviously established itself as the alpha pretty quickly, and then it beat the living hell out of my other Pachyrhinosaurs constantly, which wouldn't be a big deal except they get injured and then they then have to be looked after, and it becomes a bit of a pain. I'm not saying never make an aggressive dinosaur, especially if it's going to live alone, it's not a problem at all, really. But if you're going to have many dinosaurs together, I would suggest trying to limit the number of aggressive genes in particular. The others are all okay, you can kind of adjust for things like this, but the aggressive one will cause you a headache. Our next tip is kind of a throwback to Jurassic World Evolution 1 with a little bit of extra detail at the end, and that is a lot of you are going to want to do challenge mode. Challenge mode on easy and medium is easy enough, but this is really for hard and especially for Jurassic. Now keep in mind you will have to do challenge mode on hard mode on every level in order to unlock all the dinosaur skins in the game, so I assume that's something people are generally speaking quite interested in doing. Now, the main reason I see people fail challenge mode is not what they do later on, it's how they start. It's very easy to go bankrupt. It's actually easier to go bankrupt in Evolution 2 than it was in Evolution 1. And if you come into your operations tab, and again, like I say, this really only applies to Jurassic mode and hard at a push. And people see all these buildings. You've got your science center, your expedition center, your staff centers, your response facility, your paleomedical facility. All these buildings that Chaos Theory mode teaches you are vital, or campaign teaches you are vital. They're not. You do not need a science center. You do not need a staff center. You do not need a paleomedical facility. What are the chances you need to do research in the first 5-10 minutes, or you need to heal a dinosaur in the first 5-10 minutes? No, your only priority at the start of challenge mode is getting dinosaurs into your park so you can open up the park and then cram as much money as you can out of your shops. That's how you get started in challenge mode. You will need a response facility pretty quickly because you'll need it to check on your dinosaurs' stats, on their status to make sure they're happy. But if you know that the dinosaurs are happy, if you've got that in your brain already, and especially if it's a herbivorous dinosaur with no feeder to recover, to refill, you could do away with the response facility as well. You know, if you've got a few Struthiomymuses, they're not going to break out and murder everyone. You're probably going to be okay. So, don't focus on getting all the buildings. You want an expedition center to get those initial dinosaurs. But really, the most important is, of course, getting yourself a hatchery. Now, hatcheries this time around are a little bit different than they were in Jurassic World Evolution 1. They work in functionally the same way, but they are still, as you can see, very expensive buildings, $250,000. But thankfully, this time around, if we get our lovely little glowing hatchery here, okay, the Struthies are basically done, got a nice big 5-egg clutch, and instead of clicking release dinosaurs, we're going to release via airlift. And what this lets us do is pick a point in our park and drop all our Struthies there. So, what you can do is have your hatchery here, off to the side, contained within your maintenance buildings, and not even linking into an exhibit at all. One hatchery can serve your entire park. It does mean you'll miss out on the cool animations, and they are very cool, but especially if you're playing on Jurassic Challenge mode, this is $250,000 you can't afford to spend. And if you do it this way, you can also avoid needing a response facility to transport the dinosaurs, because the game will allow you to do that automatically. So that is how I would recommend starting off from challenge mode, and I'd also recommend definitely researching a power station ASAP. You do not want to be using backup generators on Jurassic mode at all. The next thing you'll want to consider that you didn't really have to as much in the first game is your dinosaur combinations. With the addition of pack hunting in particular, the combinations that did work, off we go, the combinations that did work in the first game will no longer work. For example, in Jurassic World Evolution, one of the famed combinations for challenge mode was Dilophosaurus and Diplodocus. That let you get a huge amount of money from a relatively small habitat. It was one of the most efficient exhibits in the entire game, especially before DLC came out. That does not work in Jurassic World Evolution 2. The same applies to your small carnivores and large carnivores. You would often mix a Dilophosaurus with, say, a larger carnivore, because the Dilophosaurus and the large carnivore would never interact, just as the Velociraptors wouldn't, unless it was very specifically a T-Rex, and only then after return to Jurassic Park. It used to be that you could make all those combinations, and large carnivores would leave alone sauropods, and small carnivores would leave alone large carnivores and sauropods, and small carnivores would leave alone your armored herbivores like your ceratopsids and your ankylosaurids. None of that is true anymore. They will all murder each other with no hesitation. It does make mixed habitats a little bit harder outside of sandbox, actually even on sandbox right now, but yeah, it does make sense really if you think about it. And one little extra note on this, the Velociraptors and a lot of other dinosaurs in the game will tell you in their cohabitation preferences that they quite like Compsognathus. And they do. It's true, because they eat them. This is a lie. It is not to be trusted. Your dinosaurs will happily eat compies. I first brought my Velociraptors into this habitat with compies because it says they like them, they like living together, and it's because it's a little snack for the Velociraptor. They will eat them up and swallow them down, no problem at all. Many other dinosaurs do the same thing. They all say they want to live with compy, and it's because they like to eat them. Leave your compies on their own, or indeed with some herbivores, they'll be okay. We're going to stay here for this one for a cheeky little tip that was a big thing in Evolution 1, but in case people missed it, it's the fence repair trick. So you'll often have a broken fence. Even more in Evolution 2, we've got these new calamities, things will hit you hard. And whilst you can't pause mid-calamity in Evolution 2, a general broken fence from a dinosaur is essentially the same deal. Now, although fences take a little time to build now, it's based on bit by bit. So what you're going to do is pause the game like so, delete, and this probably won't work instantly. Shows what I know. There you go. This technique is, as it always has been, super cheesy. It's even worse now that you can actually pause the game. You used to just have to kind of replace the fence super quickly. If you see a dinosaur breaking on a fence and you're worried it's going to break out and eat your people, the other trick that you do, let's say the raptor is here breaking on this fence right here, is you do this. And you give yourself a little bit of extra time. Now this is a little tougher because it does have to build the fence bit by bit, but the lower quality of fences, as in the smaller electrified fence is the smallest, lowest quality, lowest security, the quicker that will go. So this is a lot quicker because it's a really weak fence. Just use a weak fence. You're just trying to hold your dinosaurs a little bit longer until whatever's causing them to rage out is over, basically. And I'm going to cheat for the final tip because I couldn't think of a 10th. The final tip is to have fun, ladies and gentlemen. Smell the roses, take your time. The dinosaurs have lots of really cool new behaviors that you're going to want to observe. The levels are beautiful, there's really cool new maps. There's a lot to enjoy about Evolution 2. Take your time. You know, it's going to be here for years yet. There's going to be lots of updates, I'm sure. So just take your time, have some fun. You know, things will go badly, but you want to revel in the chaos a little bit. Although that does remind me, so basically I had all these written down and then I lost the file, so I had to rewrite them. And I knew I'd forgotten one and I just remembered it. So ignore having fun. Fun is stupid. The final tip is, storms in this game, all the calamities, way more than the first game, will ravage your income. They will destroy it, you'll lose several stars, and your money will plummet. On challenge mode especially, but also on Chaos Theory, I'd really recommend having a stable of $1 or $2 million really sitting in the bank ready, otherwise you will constantly drop into bankruptcy. All the money values have been kind of turned up in this game a little bit. It's a lot harder to make money, especially at the start, and you will teeter on the edge quite a long time, and storms will wreck you, and you can find yourself kind of stuck in a loop that you'll never get out of. So I would recommend just having a little backup balance just in case, and of course have lots of storm shelters and stuff like that. There we go, that was a real tip. But also have fun, there's a bonus tip. Okay, that's it from me. You'll all have the game in your hands come tomorrow, so you can put some of these into practice. If I had to say what's most important, again, the path and shop system, absolutely number one. And also keep an eye on your electricity as well. That will be a big thing for people, I'm pretty sure. Right, that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you lovely folks next time. Cheers much love as always. Throw me a like if you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.
Reaching out.